This is sort of the game plan for today. So I'm going to talk about a bit about who I am, who we are, a bit about air pollution and what the problem is, and then zoom in on idling and kind of what we're doing there and why that's important and good work for schools and community groups. We're going to talk a bit about what we're doing with schools and let you know the full offer of what we've got, our kind of free resources and workshops, all those things. Yes, and then we're going to talk about that new advertising campaign that we've got, Engine Off Every Stop, that we're really excited to have been sharing for these past 4 weeks, and then we're going to open out to a bit of a group discussion. So yes, housekeeping at the start. This session is going to be recorded so that we can share it later on. There'll be opportunities to ask questions after each of those kind of blobs on that board before, so that we can have a bit of a discussion as we go along. But at the end of this session, we're going to open up to a kind of wider discussion, first about idling and then about air quality issues more generally, especially around schools. Thanks so much. Okay, so about idling action, because a lot of you don't know who we are and what we're doing. So idling action is a Mayor's Air Quality funded project. And what that looks like is it's two offices. It's myself and my colleague Natalie. And we work with 31 participating boroughs in London. So that's pretty much across the whole city. And we target idling hotspots and high pollution neighbourhoods. We do that by focusing on behaviour change and education. That involves lots of schools engagement. So before the pandemic, myself and Natalie were out and about at schools 3 or 4 times a week. Kind of lots and lots of schools engagement. That looks a bit different now, and we're going to come on to that a bit later in that session. Another big part of what we do is business engagement and engaging fleets with local authorities with our Engines Off campaign. We have a comms and ad campaign, that's that Engine Off Every Stop that we shared about 3 weeks ago now, that we'll be coming on to how schools can get involved with that and how community groups can get involved with that later in the session. And we also work with local authorities in a number of ways, including on enforcement against idling as well. Next slide, please, Michaela. Thanks so much. So a little bit of a background on air quality in London. I know that I've got a kind of range of you in the audience, so some of you are going to know all about this, and this might be quite new to some others. So this project is a project tackling air pollution, and it tackles air pollution in a very local way. So pollutants in London, there are all types of pollutants. There's sulfur dioxide, heavy metals, there's ozone. But in London today, we're normally talking about nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. This lovely picture of a human hair in the top right of your screen gives you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about when we say particulate matter. Really small particles that are much, much smaller than hairs, completely invisible, that we can breathe in and can do us some damage. Nitrogen dioxide is a toxic gas that's normally associated with engines and things like that. So this can come from a lot of places. There are background sources of pollution that might come in from the weather, and there are also some very localized sources of pollution too. And that's sort of where we come in about what we can do about local sources of pollution, especially around schools and around our kind of neighborhoods where we need clean air the most, because it's so important for public health. Local authorities have a responsibility to measure and report on pollution levels. So you might see these diffusion tubes out and about. You might see that box on that pavement there is a continuous monitoring station. So they've got statutory obligations to check on air quality, to measure it and report on it. There are legal limits for kind of annual averages of what that air quality looks like. The number of schools in London, good news, in polluted areas has fallen drastically since 2016, which is really fantastic. However, 40% of that NOx pollution, that nitrogen dioxide NOx, I will use them a bit interchangeably. 40% of that nitrogen dioxide pollution, that toxic gas, is coming from road transport, so the roads around our schools. Diesel cars are the single largest contributor to this pollution. I think that's from a study by Breathe London, and it's shared through the GLA. Next slide, please, Michaela. Thank you so much. This is, don't call me out, it's a slightly old graphic from 2013. But I really find it a very useful one when talking about air quality issues. It's modeled data, first of all, so we don't have any way of making a complete accurate live map of where pollution is and what it's doing. So kind of pollution moves all time and is often highly localized, which is where incidents like idling and leaving an engine running can come into it. Kind of local authorities have to get quite a good picture of what that pollution looks like, and they do that by measuring all the time. What this map shows really well is that it highlights roads as a primary source of nitrogen dioxide pollution. In London, about 50% of the nitrogen dioxide that we're exposed to comes from road traffic. It also shows us a little bit how pollutants behave and disperse. So it kind of shows us that that pollution can build up around those roads where it's coming from. And it gives us a bit of a sense of the problem and the challenge that we're facing when we're tackling air pollution, especially around schools. We know that we've got some schools, hospitals, and kind of community hubs that are going to be on these quite busy, quite polluted roads. So it kind of gives us a bit of a sense of the scale of the challenge that we're looking at and how we can address some of those inequalities in public health, really. Next slide, please, Michaela. Thanks so much. So why we tackle idling, to zoom in for a moment, idling being leaving your engine running, and in the way that we speak about it is generally leaving your engine running at the side of the road. So that's when you're pulled over, when you're stationary. Idling is really bad because it creates NOx, it creates nitrogen dioxide pollution, which we know is toxic. It damages the heart, lungs, and brain. It's linked to stunted development, to premature deaths. I think in 2010, 9,000 early deaths were associated with air pollution. So idling produces pollution in a highly localized manner. So that pollution is going to build up around and also inside the vehicle that is leaving its engine running. So idling is why we're tackling it. It's completely unnecessary. It happens often in key locations, something that's really common around schools because kids are picked up and dropped off. You've kind of got two spikes of pollution each day around most of our schools. And it's something that's a really kind of fruitful thing to tackle. There are low barriers to change. It's a zero cost action that we can suggest for people to do. So it's a really fantastic way of starting to reduce air quality and make some cleaner air locally. Idling is a traffic offence that you can receive a fine for. That's something that some of us have picked up on, and we might come onto that a bit later in our discussion. There's new evidence that TRL, Transport Research Laboratory, I think, produced with us, looking at data from vehicles to get a picture of what that kind of emissions profile from an idling vehicle looks like. Idling for just 30 seconds produces twice as much nitrogen dioxide pollution as the emissions from switching off and switching back on, and a family-sized diesel car can emit up to 0.07 grams of NOx per minute whilst idling. That might sound like a tiny amount, 0.07 grams, but bearing in mind that we normally measure nitrogen dioxide in air pollution in microns, that's actually quite significant. So about what we do to tackle idling on our project. So in these 31 London boroughs that we're working in, we really focus on education and behaviour change. It's why schools are such an important part of our work. We give workshops, which is a really important aspect that we'll come on to a little bit. And we provide positive actions. If everyone can mute, because I've got a bit of an echo. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you. So yes, we're a behaviour change project. So we look at ways of getting people involved with air quality issues, be it specifically about idling or a bit more generally, and we do that with kind of positive encouragement. It's idling's a really easy thing that people can avoid doing. We do this at idling action events. We recruit volunteers that might be around schools, could be from parents, PTAs, and occasionally it's with kids in the school, could be junior travel ambassadors, guys like that, and we can go out around a school And we can talk to, it might be parents picking kids up, it might be local drivers in the area that are idling. We can talk to them about what we know about pollution, give some really important messages about public health, and if they are leaving their engine running and they don't need to be, we can ask them to switch off too. So our idling action champions are really powerful messengers, especially if they're kids. It's really, really hitting to have that message coming from a young person that kind of your actions are producing this effect on my health. It's kind of really highlights those inequalities. We make sure that we're kind of visible in the community. We've got these tabards, we've got leaflets, we've got banners. We've spoken to over 800 drivers and pedestrians, and over 80% of the drivers we've engaged with have switched off when we've asked them to. We also do work with businesses and local authorities to kind of make idling policies and to get them to make some more wider commitments so that we can make sure that idling isn't a part of their operations normally. Next slide, please, Michaela. Thanks so much. So what we do with schools, and that's I think what's going to be of interest to most of you here, because I think lots of you are from schools today. We work with schools in particular because we know that a lot of schools can be idling hotspots, especially primary schools. That's why we have focused our offering onto primary schools. We've made kind of workshops especially for a primary school audience. The increased exposure that kids kids and you guys that work at schools have to face at the schools means that it's a public health issue. Children are particularly vulnerable to the effects of air pollution. As your internal organs are growing, as your heart, lungs, and brain are growing, they need clean air to grow healthy, to grow strong. Lung development is stunted by 10% in children that grow up in particularly polluted areas. And there are new links to academic development, that kids do better in school if they're breathing clean air. Do get in touch and I can link you with those studies a bit later. Schools are also really great to work with because it's an opportunity to engage the whole school community. It's a great springboard to not only kind of get the kids thinking about pollution, but to get their parents thinking about it too. And then we can kind of ripple out from there and push that message out through the community. So it's a really fantastic point of contact for our London communities. Schools that we work with, we are funded to lead workshops in London schools. If you're joining us today and you are outside of London, our resources are still totally free to use. Do have a look at the toolkit section of our website. We'll come on to that. We focus on Key Stage 2. We've also given workshops and interventions to other year groups, to other kind of school groups as well, be it secondary, be it junior schools. There's always something that we can do to help out with idling in your area. And we're very flexible with delivery. Of course, the big word, pandemic, we've had to change what we do quite a lot. We don't go in and do school sessions like we used to, but we've developed YouTube resources where our complete offering is now available online and that we can offer in a distance manner. So next little bit, please, Michaela. We offer school workshops which are fully funded. Be it virtually or be it in person, we can come to your school, teach kids about air quality, air pollution, its sources, its effects, how they can reduce it, how they can avoid it, and why it's so important for your health. And how they can make an influence in their local area and really kind of feel empowered. And then again, it's about getting that message to parents and to drivers around the school as well. So we co-create these air pollution banners, this blue thing that we can see in the bottom right, which we give to your schools to keep. That's the kind of product of the workshop. And yes, we can be very flexible with how we can offer these online as well. We can offer take-home resources for parents too. Next slide, Michaela. We also run idling interventions. So that looks a bit like these idling action events. It might be with junior travel ambassadors. It might be with eco reps. It might be with school council. Might be with PTA or parent volunteers as well, with a small group of idling action champions that we can train about how to talk to drivers in a really effective way, in a really persuasive and engaging way, and also to get those really important facts about health messaging across too. So we can go outside the school, normally at pickup time, at the end of the day, and talk to drivers when we've got a big influx of people that might be idling in their cars, and tell them about why idling is something that we really want to avoid around the school. We can provide tabards and resources. So even if we're not able to run a session with you on one day, we can offer all schools a session, but so that you can keep running sessions in future, so you can do them maybe monthly, whatever it might be. We can give you guys the resources to kickstart and run these sessions on your own, and all the kind of knowledge and tips and advice you need. Next slide, please. Thanks so much. A aspect of our work that we developed over the start of the pandemic was our pledge exercises. So a kind of take-home exercise for parents. Pester power is something that we talk about. Kids kind of convincing mum or dad or whoever it might be that that idling is actually something that's really important that we shouldn't do. Building a kind of base of support around the school. So we've got a critical mass of kind of parents and of the school community that is kind of a bit more clued up to air quality and wants to keep the air around the school clean, healthy and safe. So that's a really good way of building lasting behaviour change. We can set that up as a class competition, which class can get the most pledges, and kind of take it from there. And you can even go further, you can have a whole school pledge. We're kind of different aspect of our work is working with businesses and fleets, like we said before on that Engines Off campaign. So you can even point guys that are working with contractors and partners our way, and we can give them training too. That could be a really fantastic way of maximising impact in your school. Do we have, no, I've got one more slide, please. Sorry, Michaela. Thanks so much. Especially if you're outside of London, if you're a school that's in London, give us an email right after this session, info@idlingaction.london, and we can look to get a session booked in and set up and kind of talk about what that might look like for your school. If you're outside of London, then a really great way of getting the most out of what we have on offer is the toolkits section of our website. We've condensed all our wisdom and experience into these free downloadable toolkits. You just need to put in some really basic information, and that's yours to use as you feel like. It's information on how to run your own workshops. It's got that YouTube link to a kind of YouTube version of the workshop that we give for kids. It's got leaflets, it's got stickers, it's got the works. So a really exciting thing that we launched, it was the 22nd of February, so it was about 3 weeks ago now, was our Engines Off Every Stop campaign, which was a London-wide advertising campaign. So we've kind of spent months kind of putting this thing together, and thinking about messaging around idling and around air quality and that kind of public health, what that means for the kind of hearts, lungs, and brains of Londoners. We've made these adverts that we've been sharing online. We've been sharing them on billboards. We've been sharing them on radio over the last 4 weeks. Yes, they're kind of, we created them so that we could push our message even further, so that we could get that message out about idling, especially in a kind of pandemic situation where we're not able to engage people face to face as much as we used to. We know that there's a kind of variable baseline understanding of air quality issues in London. For some people, we've kind of it's something that there've been an increasing number of kind of news stories on and things, and what that means for health and for young people. But we know that idling isn't a word that always rings a bell with everyone. We created these images in this campaign to kind of tell a visual story about idling, to kind of show this ominous kind of presence coming out the back of your vehicle when you're leaving it running, and then we've kind of used that as a moment to include some healthcare messaging as well. There's a video which I'll be showing in a couple of minutes as well. So you can search us on Idling Action on Twitter and hashtag Engines Off. We've really been pushing this message with kind of all our might over the last 4 weeks, and we've got some really good traction on it. It's been received kind of far and wide, and we're really excited by that. And one of the big reasons why I'm really keen to talk to schools today is because a really fantastic way of us pushing out this message, and of you guys helping us with this campaign, kind of with minimal input really, is if you guys can share this message, be it with letters home with parents, be it on your school's social media, on your school's website, We've got a small link to a 1-minute YouTube video that's a fantastic tool to kind of get people thinking about idling and about why it's really important to switch off when you don't need to have that engine running for cleaner air. So yeah, kind of really the kind of big thing that I want you guys to do today is to get in touch with us so that we can give you the kind of images, we can give you the video, we can give you the text you need to share this with your whole school community, because that's going to be a really fantastic way of us reaching so many more drivers than we could with our little budget to kind of put things out on billboards. It's a really good way of us kind of continuing this work to spread the message about air pollution and public health. Yes, so that's something that we created, this video in particular, a really fantastic one to share around schools, kind of condenses the kind of research and the understanding that we've got around air pollution and around the kind of really important messages around what that pollution means for your health. The supporter pack that's going to follow this session has got some tips on how you might be able to share that with the wider community, with PTAs, and that's going to be a really good way of getting that message out a bit more. So now, guys, I'd like to open up to a bit more of a discussion. If you've got questions about idling or kind of points and tips and experience to share, then kind of now's the opportunity to do so. Steph, thank you very much for sharing AirText. That's a really great one for alerts, so that you are conscious of high pollution days and steps that you can take to avoid pollution, closing windows, and to kind of avoid strenuous exercise outdoors, things like that. That's a really good one. There is plenty on offer for schools. The Schools Air Quality Forum is a really good one, and the help desk will be really useful. Do have a Google of Clean Air Day and also maybe a Car Free Day. That could be really great dates for the calendar to coordinate some assemblies or activities around. But so school workshops is something that we really want you guys to get in touch for, and also sharing this new ad campaign. If you're a Twitter user, if you're even not, have a look at our Twitter, and you can kind of see the messaging that we've been pushing out with these adverts over the last 3-4 weeks. It's a really great message to share with parents around the school and get that critical mass of support so that we can make sure that your school becomes a kind of no idling area. Keep that air safer, keep it healthier, and keep your kids healthier too. Thank you so much, Nilesh, and thank you to everyone in the chat for all your questions. Thank you, and thanks for sticking with us through technical issues at the start of the event. It's always a bit of a challenge in these situations. Thank you, Jane. So I'm going to put the info at Idling Action address for anyone that wants to get in touch. Any questions, any concerns, if you want any of the resources, do look there. Also look at our website, www.idlingaction.london, and especially on the toolkits page, which is going to be really useful too. Thanks so much. Yes, over the summer term, we've got loads of capacity to offer virtual workshops, and fingers crossed come September we'll be able to come in and do some in-person workshops too, but there's no reason why we can't offer you both, basically. So thanks so much for giving up your time and for coming today and for making some really great suggestions, and have a lovely evening, guys. Thank you very much.